I stood on the rooftop of my once beloved home, the city sprawled beneath me like a broken promise. Just a few months ago, I had been the proud parent of a bright-eyed boy, my heart full of dreams for his future. We laughed together, shared secrets, and built a life that felt secure. But all of that changed the day he told me to leave, his voice shaking, eyes filled with a mix of fear and anger. "You don't belong here anymore," he had said, as if I were the intruder in our own life. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. I'd sacrificed everything for him, only to discover that someone had whispered poison into his ear. I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. The very city that once cradled our memories now felt like a cage. But in that moment of despair, a fire ignited within me, a promise of vengeance that would be both calculated and satisfying. I wouldn't just walk away, I would reclaim every piece of what had been stolen from me. This city, once a symbol of our happiness, would be my weapon. The stakes were high, and justice would be served, not just for myself but for the bond that had been shattered. My son may have thought he could cast me out, but I would return, not as a defeated parent, but as the architect of my own retribution. Join me on this journey of justice and revenge. If you're watching this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below to share your thoughts. Let's see how far a parent will go to reclaim what's rightfully theirs. Don't miss what comes next in this story of betrayal and redemption. I remember the mornings in our little corner of the city, where sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, casting golden rays across the breakfast table. The scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the sweet aroma of pancakes, each bite a reminder of the love that filled our home. My son, Ethan, would sit across from me, his laughter brightening the day as he recounted tales of his adventures at school. Those moments felt perfect, like a well-rehearsed play where every line was delivered with sincerity. Our home was modest but filled with warmth. Pictures of family outings adorned the walls, each frame capturing a slice of our shared history. I took pride in every detail, from the worn-out sofa that cradled our late-night movie marathons to the garden where we spent lazy afternoons planting flowers. Life felt stable, anchored by love and laughter. I often thought about how fortunate we were, finding joy in the mundane, comfort in our routines. But lurking beneath this serene surface was a tension I couldn't quite place. It was subtle, a fleeting glance between Ethan and his mother, Sarah, that lingered a moment too long. I brushed it off as nothing, perhaps a secret they were sharing, but that little twitch in my gut persisted. Sarah was the love of my life, and I had always trusted her completely. Yet, as I watched her smile soften when Ethan spoke about his friends, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more at play. The evenings were my favorite. We'd gather in the living room, a fortress of soft blankets and popcorn, watching movies that turned our living room into a world of fantasy. I loved how Ethan would cheer for the hero, his eyes wide with hope and belief in justice. I often found myself lost in thoughts about the future, his future. I dreamed of him growing up to be kind and courageous, traits I hoped to nurture in him. Yet as the days turned into weeks, I noticed Sarah's unease. She would often stare out the window, lost in thought, her fingers tapping restlessly against the table. I'd ask if everything was all right, and she'd wave it off with a smile, but I could see the shadows of doubt creeping into her eyes. It was then that I began to notice how her charm could dim, how her laughter could sometimes sound hollow. One evening, as we sat together after Ethan had gone to bed, I broached the subject. "You seem distant lately. Is everything okay?" I asked, my voice laced with concern. She glanced at me, her eyes clouded with something I couldn't quite decipher. "Just tired, love. You know how hectic things get," she replied, but something in her tone felt off. It was as if she were hiding a storm behind a calm facade. I wanted to press further, to dig deeper, but I didn't want to shatter the fragile peace we had built. As weeks passed, I began to notice more red flags, small but unsettling. Ethan would occasionally mention a new friend in hushed tones, someone I hadn't met. "He's really cool, Dad, you'll like him," he'd say, but the way he said it felt rehearsed, as if he were trying to sell me a story that wasn't true. I dismissed it, chalking it up to normal childhood secrecy, but a nagging worry settled in my chest. Then came that fateful day when Ethan announced he was going to a friend's house for the first time. "It's just down the street, Dad. I'll be back before dinner," he beamed, excitement radiating from him. I wanted to trust him, to believe that everything was okay, but something in my gut told me to be cautious. I caught Sarah's eye as he left, and the fleeting look she gave me, a mixture of concern and something else, sent alarm bells ringing in my mind. I tried to shake it off, to focus on the mundane chores of preparing dinner, but as the aroma of simmering sauce filled the air, I couldn't help but feel a sense of impending doom. I dismissed my thoughts, convincing myself that I was being paranoid. After all, we were a family, unbreakable, united. But the cracks were forming, invisible fractures in our once happy home. I couldn't see it then, but the foundation of our lives was beginning to crumble, hidden beneath layers of normalcy. The calm before the storm felt heavier, charged with a tension I could no longer ignore. As night fell, I waited for Ethan to return, the shadows stretching across the room, mirroring the growing uncertainty in my heart. I thought of those sunny mornings, the laughter and the dreams we shared. I wanted to cling to those moments, to believe that our happiness could withstand anything. But the winds of change were whispering, and chaos was lurking just around the corner, ready to shatter the peace we had fought so hard to maintain. Stay tuned as the story unfolds and witness the unraveling of a bond that once seemed unbreakable. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support means everything as we navigate this journey together. As the days slipped by, the unsettling feelings began to crystallize into something tangible, a knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Ethan's behavior shifted subtly. He'd become evasive, often retreating to his room with his phone clutched tightly in his hand. I tried to dismiss my worries, reassuring myself that this was just a phase of growing independence, but the nagging doubt persisted. It began with small observations. A missed call from an unknown number that flashed on his phone as he dashed away, the way he would quickly close the door if I approached. I found myself lingering outside his room, straining to hear snippets of conversations that drifted through the cracks. His laughter sounded different, lighter, even as my heart felt heavier with each passing day. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, I decided to confront him. "Ethan, can we talk?" I asked, hoping to penetrate the barrier he had erected. He looked up from his video game, surprise flickering across his face, quickly masked by a veneer of indifference. "Sure, Dad, what's up?" he replied, but his eyes darted to the screen, avoiding mine. "I've just noticed you've been a bit distant lately. Is everything okay?" I probed, keeping my tone light though my heart raced. "Yeah, it's nothing, just school stuff, you know," he shrugged, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he fidgeted with the controller. I knew better than to press further then. Instead, I resolved to investigate quietly, to gather evidence before jumping to conclusions. I started with his school records, accessing the online portal late one night after he had gone to bed. My heart raced as I navigated through grades and attendance, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. It was frustrating, a dead end that only amplified my unease. Next, I moved on to his social media accounts. I had always believed in respecting his privacy, but desperation blurred my principles. I created a fake account using a different name to gain access to his friends and their conversations. The moment I clicked send on the friend request, a wave of guilt washed over me, but I pushed it aside. I needed answers. Days passed and I monitored the interactions closely. The conversations were innocuous at first, light banter about video games and school assignments. But then I stumbled upon a group chat that sent chills down my spine. References to secret meetups, plans that seemed to hint at something more than innocent fun. My heart raced as I scrolled through the messages, piecing together the puzzle. Ethan's friends were discussing a party that I knew nothing about, a gathering that reeked of rebellion. I felt the dread settle in like a thick fog, obscuring my thoughts. I had always trusted Ethan, but this felt different. As I scrolled further, I noticed a name that sent alarm bells ringing: Derek. I recalled Ethan mentioning him in passing, a new friend he seemed excited about, but something about this boy felt off. I needed more information. I decided to reach out to other parents, discreetly inquiring about Derek. The more I learned, the more my heart sank. Derek was known for his charm, but there were whispers, rumors about his reckless behavior, stories of late-night escapades that didn't align with the values I had instilled in Ethan. My instincts screamed at me. This was the thread that could unravel everything. One afternoon, I found myself at the local cafe sipping coffee while pretending to read a book. My eyes scanned the room, searching for familiar faces. I spotted a couple of parents from the neighborhood and seized the opportunity. "Hey, have you guys heard about Derek?" I asked, trying to sound casual. The conversation shifted, and I listened intently as they shared their concerns. "He's trouble, you know, always getting into things he shouldn't," one mother said, shaking her head. I could feel the weight of her words settling heavily in my chest. That evening, I decided to confront Sarah. She had been quieter than usual, lost in her thoughts, and I sensed that she knew more than she was letting on. "We need to talk about Ethan," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Her gaze shifted, a flicker of apprehension crossing her face. "What do you mean?" "I've noticed changes in him, his friends, the secrecy. There's something going on, and I think we need to address it together." Her eyes narrowed slightly, and for a moment I thought I saw a flash of something fear, perhaps. "He's growing up, love. It's normal for him to want some space," she replied, but her tone lacked conviction. "Normal?" I echoed, frustration creeping into my voice. "He's hiding things, and I'm worried about who he's surrounding himself with. This Derek, I don't like what I've heard." For a moment, silence enveloped us. The air felt charged, thick with unspoken words. Finally, she sighed, her shoulders slumping in resignation. "I just didn't want to worry you. I've seen the changes too, but I thought he would come to us when he was ready." I shook my head, anger and fear swirling within me. "We can't wait. I need to know what's happening. I can feel something's off." With that, I resolved to dig deeper. I started checking Ethan's phone when he wasn't around, a violation of trust that gnawed at me. I discovered texts that made my stomach churn, plans for secret meetings with Derek, references to substances I never thought my son would even consider. Each message felt like a dagger, piercing the hope I had clung to. The dread transformed into full-blown anxiety. I felt like a detective in a world where the lines between right and wrong blurred. I had to protect my son, but at what cost? The calm veneer of our lives was shattering, revealing chaos beneath. As I sat in the dark, the weight of my discoveries pressed down on me. I realized that the calm before the storm was gone, replaced by an impending sense of doom. I was on the edge of something I couldn't control, and the fear of losing my son was the most profound terror I had ever faced. Stay tuned as the truth unfolds, and witness the lengths a parent will go to protect their child. If you're following this journey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support fuels this quest for answers. The following morning began like any other, yet it felt different, laden with an unshakable heaviness that clung to the air. I woke up to the sound of Ethan's laughter drifting from the kitchen, a sound I had come to cherish even amidst the chaos. But as I stepped out of the bedroom, a strange sense of foreboding washed over me. The sun filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow, but it did little to alleviate the dread that gnawed at my insides. I made my way to the kitchen, expecting to find Ethan and Sarah sharing breakfast. Instead, I found Sarah standing by the window, staring out into the street, her expression distant and troubled. "Morning, love," I greeted, but she didn't respond. I felt an unsettling chill creep up my spine, a stark contrast to the warmth of the morning sun. "Is everything okay?" I asked, my voice tinged with concern. She turned to me, her eyes glossed with unshed tears, and my heart dropped. "I got a call from the doctor," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's about my mother." The world around me blurred as I processed her words. "What do you mean?" I stepped closer, instinctively reaching for her hand. "What's wrong?" "She's been diagnosed with advanced cancer," Sarah said, her voice cracking. "They say it's spread too far, there's not much they can do." The room spun as the weight of her words settled over me like a suffocating blanket. I felt as if the ground had been ripped from beneath my feet, leaving me teetering on the edge of an abyss. My mind raced, trying to comprehend the magnitude of the situation. Sarah's mother had always been a pillar of strength, a vibrant presence in our lives. The thought of losing her felt like a cruel joke, a nightmare I couldn't wake from. "I'm so sorry," I murmured, pulling her into an embrace, my heart aching for the pain she must be feeling. But even in that moment, a part of me felt a rush of responsibility, a need to protect my family from this new threat. I couldn't let my son see his mother break down. I had to be the strong one. "Are they sure?" I asked, trying to grasp at any shred of hope. But Sarah shook her head, her expression one of despair. "They've done all the tests. It's too late for treatment. I don't know what to do." Her voice trembled, and I could see the storm of emotions swirling behind her eyes: fear, sadness, confusion. In those moments, my priorities shifted. I needed to be the anchor for both Sarah and Ethan. "We need to be there for her," I said, trying to muster a sense of calm. "We'll figure this out together. We'll support your mom in whatever way she needs." As the day wore on, I found myself in a daze, each moment dragging painfully as we tried to navigate the reality of the news. I reached out to family and friends, organizing visits and support, though the weight of grief pressed heavily on my chest. I felt like I was in a fog, moving through life without truly engaging with it. Ethan remained blissfully unaware of the turmoil unfolding in the background. I wanted to shield him from this devastation, to protect his childhood innocence for as long as I could. But as the days passed and the reality of Sarah's mother's illness became more pronounced, the burden of secrecy felt heavier. One evening, while I was sitting with Ethan as he worked on his homework, I caught a glimpse of the text messages still populating his phone. "Party tonight, don't tell your parents." The screen flashed and a pang of panic shot through me. This was not the time for distractions. I needed to focus on my family, on Sarah's mother. "Ethan," I said, trying to gauge his mood, "how are you doing with everything?" His eyes flickered up to meet mine, and I could see a hint of confusion in them. "I'm fine, Dad, just busy with school," he replied, but there was a shadow over his words. I wanted to pry deeper, to ask him about Derek, about the secrecy, but the weight of Sarah's news loomed over me, anchoring my thoughts. That night, as I lay awake beside Sarah, I could hear her soft sobs in the dark. My heart broke for her. I felt utterly helpless. "I wish I could take this pain away," I whispered, pulling her closer. "I just don't know how to tell her," Sarah said, her voice muffled in the darkness. "She's always been so strong. I can't bear to see her break." In that moment, I realized that we were not just battling an illness. We were facing the very real prospect of loss and grief. The thought of losing Sarah's mother, of watching the light slowly fade from her eyes, felt unbearable. I had often taken for granted the moments shared with her, the wisdom she offered, the laughter that echoed through our family gatherings. As the days turned into a blur of hospital visits and whispered conversations, I tried to maintain a facade of strength. I became a silent observer in my own life, feeling more like an outsider than ever before. The joy and laughter that had once filled our home felt muted, overshadowed by the gravity of the situation. Then one afternoon, as I stood outside the hospital waiting room, a wave of nausea hit me. I found myself staring at the floor, my heart racing. What if the worst happened? What if I lost Sarah's mother, and in the process, lost the fragile bond that held our family together? I suddenly felt the urge to protect everyone, to shield them from the storm that was brewing. The gravity of the situation settled heavily on my shoulders, and I felt the familiar knot of anxiety tightening again. I had to focus. I had to be strong, not just for Sarah, but for Ethan. I needed to guide him through this, to show him how to cope with loss and grief. But as I stood there, grappling with my own fear, I realized that the villain in this story was not just the illness, but the chaos that threatened to unravel everything we had built. Stay with us as we navigate this uncharted territory of grief and resilience. Your support is crucial. Like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Join us as we face the challenges ahead together. The days that followed Sarah's mother's diagnosis felt like a whirlwind, an emotional roller coaster that left me breathless. I spent my mornings at the hospital holding Sarah's hand as we navigated the harsh realities of her mother's condition. The afternoons were filled with phone calls to family, coordinating visits and support, while the evenings morphed into restless nights where sleep eluded me. But amidst the chaos, a sense of dread lingered, a nagging feeling that something was terribly wrong with Ethan. It was during one of those long, sleepless nights that I decided to dig deeper. I needed to confront the truth about Derek and the influence he had over my son. I found myself scrolling through Ethan's social media accounts again, piecing together the fragments of his life that felt so distant. What I uncovered sent icy tendrils of fear slithering down my spine. There it was, a series of messages, hidden in plain sight, discussing not just parties but something far more sinister. Ethan had been invited to a gathering that promised more than just alcohol. There were mentions of drugs, of reckless behavior, and worst of all, references to how they'd deal with parents who tried to interfere. My heart sank as I read the words over and over, disbelief morphing into a smoldering rage. I had trusted Derek, had allowed my son to befriend him, believing he was just another kid navigating adolescence. But now it became clear that he was a manipulator, a slick-talking villain cloaked in charm. I felt the air leave my lungs as the reality of the situation struck me like a physical blow. It wasn't just Ethan's rebellion I was facing. It was a betrayal that ran deeper, threatening to tear apart the very fabric of our family. Fueled by anger and desperation, I decided to confront Ethan. I waited until he returned from school, my heart pounding as I paced the living room. When he walked through the door, I could see the flicker of excitement in his eyes, but it quickly faded as he sensed the tension in the air. "Dad, what's wrong?" he asked, his brow furrowed in concern. "Sit down, Ethan, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady but laced with an urgency that made him hesitate. He settled onto the couch, the innocence of his youth clashing with the gravity of the conversation I was about to have. "I've seen the messages," I began, holding his gaze firmly. His eyes widened and I could see the panic begin to set in. "You're hanging out with Derek and I'm not okay with it. I found out what he's been involved in." "Dad, it's not like that," he protested, shaking his head fervently. "We just hang out, he's not bad." "Not bad," I echoed, incredulous. "Ethan, you're talking about a kid who is dragging you into something dangerous. I can't just stand by and let this happen." He opened his mouth to argue, but I pressed on. "Do you think I want to be the bad guy here? I'm trying to protect you. You have no idea what you're getting into." As the conversation escalated, I could see the conflict in his eyes. It was a painful reminder of the boy I once knew, now at a crossroads between innocence and recklessness. "You don't understand," he shouted, frustration spilling over. "Derek is my friend." "Friends don't lead you into danger, Ethan," I shot back, my voice rising. "Friends lift you up, not pull you down." In that moment, I saw the flicker of resentment in his eyes, the seeds of rebellion taking root. But before I could offer reassurance, my phone buzzed with a notification, distracting me momentarily. It was a message from Sarah, asking if I could meet her at the hospital. The urgency in her words felt like a slap to my face. I grabbed my keys, ready to leave, but not before shooting one last glance at Ethan. "We're not done talking about this." The drive to the hospital was a blur, my mind racing with thoughts of Ethan and the precarious situation he was in. I could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on me. I needed to be both a father and a protector to Sarah, who was grappling with her own fears and grief. When I arrived, the atmosphere in the hospital felt heavy, the sterile air thick with the scent of antiseptic and despair. I found Sarah sitting in the waiting room, her face pale, worry etched into every line. "What's happening?" I asked, my heart racing. "They just called us in to discuss treatment options," she said, her voice trembling. "They're going to need to start chemo soon, but it's going to be rough. I don't know how to tell her." As we discussed her mother's options, my thoughts kept drifting back to Ethan. The conversation we had earlier replayed in my mind like a haunting melody, and I couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. I needed to act fast to shield my son from the darkness Derek represented. After the meeting, I stepped outside for some air, needing a moment to clear my head. That's when I noticed it. A group of teenagers gathered at a nearby bench, laughing and joking, with Derek at the center of it all. A surge of rage ignited within me, the sight of him feeling like a personal affront. I could see Ethan at the edge of the group, his expression a mix of excitement and trepidation. My heart raced as I watched him inch closer, drawn in by Derek's magnetic pull. I felt an overwhelming urge to intervene, to pull Ethan away from this toxic influence, but I hesitated. I knew that confronting Derek would only escalate the situation, putting Ethan in the crossfire. Instead, I turned to leave, a plan forming in my mind. If I couldn't protect my son by confronting Derek directly, I would gather evidence, something undeniable that would expose Derek's true nature. I pulled out my phone and began taking pictures, documenting the interactions, the camaraderie that masked the danger. As I drove home that evening, the gravity of what I had witnessed weighed heavily on my mind. I needed to confront Derek to expose the truth, but I had to tread carefully. This wasn't just about protecting Ethan, it was about reclaiming our family from the chaos that threatened to consume us. Stay tuned as the battle against the unseen villain unfolds. Join me on this journey of discovery and justice, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment to share your thoughts. Your support is essential as we navigate these turbulent waters, especially with our next stop in Cairo. In the quiet solitude of my home, I found myself enveloped in a storm of emotions. The anger that had simmered beneath the surface began to boil over, transforming into a powerful resolve. I couldn't let Derek continue to manipulate Ethan or anyone else. I was no longer just a father. I was now the architect of justice, and I would dismantle the threat he posed with precision and care. My background as an engineer had instilled in me a methodical approach to problem solving. I was trained to break down complex structures into manageable parts, analyzing each component for weaknesses. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about protecting my family and reclaiming our lives from the chaos Derek had brought into it. I began drafting a plan, meticulously outlining each step I would take. My first objective was to gather evidence, proof of Derek's influence over Ethan and his dangerous behavior. I recalled the messages I had seen and the conversations that hinted at something darker. I needed to compile everything into a comprehensive dossier that would expose him for who he truly was. I started by creating a timeline, mapping out every interaction Ethan had with Derek. I collected screenshots of text messages, social media exchanges, and any pictures I had taken of their gatherings. Each piece of evidence was a brick in the wall I was building, a fortress of truth that would protect my son from the deception lurking in the shadows. Next, I turned my attention to Derek's background. I had always believed in knowing your enemy, and I was determined to learn everything I could about him. I spent hours researching online, digging through social media profiles, local news articles, and public records. I discovered that Derek had a history of trouble, rumors of minor run-ins with the law, disciplinary actions at school, and a family dynamic marked by neglect. Each revelation fueled my anger further. This was not just a boy. He was a predator preying on the vulnerability of others. As I compiled my findings, I felt a surge of clarity. I wasn't just fighting for Ethan. I was fighting for every child who had ever been led astray by someone like Derek. This was bigger than our family. It was about standing up against the darkness that threatened to consume our community. With my plan taking shape, I decided to enlist the help of a few trusted allies. I reached out to Ethan's teachers, discreetly expressing my concerns about his recent behavior and friendships. I wanted them to be aware, to keep an eye on him without alerting him to my suspicions. Their responses were supportive, and they agreed to monitor Ethan's interactions closely. Simultaneously, I began drafting a letter to the school administration, detailing my findings about Derek. I included the evidence I had collected, highlighting the risks he posed not just to Ethan but to other students as well. My engineering background helped me present the information in a clear, logical manner, making it difficult for them to dismiss. I knew that if I could get the administration involved, it would add weight to my claims and create a protective barrier around Ethan. But I wasn't done yet. I needed to confront Derek directly to let him know that I was aware of his manipulations. I planned a meeting, choosing a public place where I could maintain control. I imagined our confrontation, visualizing every detail. I would remain calm, collected, and above all, resolute. I would not allow him to intimidate me. As the day of the meeting approached, I prepared mentally and emotionally. I practiced what I would say, how I would present my evidence, and how I would respond to his inevitable denial. I imagined the satisfaction of watching his facade crumble, of seeing the realization dawn on him that he had underestimated me. On the day of our meeting, I arrived early, allowing the tension to build within me. I chose a cafe near the school, a bustling place filled with people that would provide both cover and witnesses. I ordered a coffee, my hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. I was ready. When Derek walked in, he exuded his usual confidence, but as he approached, I noticed a flicker of confusion cross his face. He clearly hadn't expected to see me here. I gestured for him to sit, my expression neutral but my heart racing. "What's this about?" he asked, feigning nonchalance, but I could see the tension beneath his casual facade. "I think we need to talk about Ethan," I said, my voice steady, cutting through the noise of the cafe. "I have some concerns about your influence over him." His smile faltered for a moment and I seized the opportunity. I laid out my evidence, one piece at a time, each revelation hitting him like a hammer. I could see his bravado slip, his confidence waning as I detailed the messages, the plans, the dangers he was introducing into my son's life. "You think you can just come here and threaten me?" he retorted, his bravado returning in a desperate attempt to regain control. "This isn't a threat, this is a warning," I replied, my voice steady. "You may think you have power, but I won't let you harm my son or anyone else. I'll make sure the school knows about your past, about who you really are." The confrontation was a turning point. I could see the realization dawn on him. The walls were closing in, and his carefully constructed illusion was crumbling. I had become the architect of justice, and he was the one whose foundation was about to be dismantled. As I left the cafe, a sense of victory washed over me, but I knew this was just the beginning. I still had to follow through on my plans to ensure Derek faced the consequences of his actions. I returned home, my mind racing with the possibilities that lay ahead. Join me as the battle for truth and justice continues. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment to share your thoughts. Your support means everything as we navigate this journey together, especially as we prepare for the next chapter in Cairo. The days following my confrontation with Derek felt charged with a newfound energy, a sense of purpose that had been absent for too long. I was no longer just a father battling against a villain. I was a strategist, meticulously orchestrating the first phase of my plan to dismantle Derek's world without him ever realizing who was behind it. The first step was to freeze Derek's access to resources, his connections, his social standing, and ultimately, his influence over Ethan and other vulnerable kids. I started by leveraging the information I had gathered about him, focusing on his family dynamics and any financial vulnerabilities that could be exploited. I reached out to a contact I had in local law enforcement, someone I trusted implicitly. I shared my concerns about Derek's behavior and the rumors surrounding him, framing it as a community issue. "He's been influencing my son and others in ways that could lead to serious trouble," I explained. "I think he might be involved in something illegal, and I'd like to see if you can look into it." My contact agreed to initiate a low-key investigation, promising to keep it under wraps while they gathered evidence. I felt a rush of satisfaction as I hung up the phone, knowing I had planted the seeds for Derek's downfall. Next, I turned my attention to his social media presence. I knew he thrived on the attention and validation he received online. I began to monitor his posts more closely, identifying patterns in his interactions. I noticed a group of peers who regularly engaged with him, echoing his reckless behavior. I decided to create an anonymous account to infiltrate this group, posing as someone interested in joining their circle. With my fake profile, I sent a friend request to Derek. It was a calculated risk, but one I felt was necessary. After a few days of tension-filled waiting, he accepted. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins as I gained access to his world, ready to gather evidence that would further expose his true nature. As I delved deeper into his online persona, I discovered a treasure trove of information. Derek was not just a local troublemaker. He was connected to a network of individuals who engaged in more dangerous activities: drug dealing, vandalism, and petty theft. Each message I read added another layer to my plan, a building block that would help me fortify my case against him. While I gathered digital evidence, I also started to freeze Derek's financial resources. I contacted the local businesses where he had connections, posing as a concerned parent and highlighting the negative influence he had over the youth in our community. "I'm worried about my son's friendships," I said, my tone sincere. "Derek seems to be leading them into dangerous situations, and I think it's affecting their behavior. Perhaps you should reconsider your support for him." One by one, businesses began to reconsider their sponsorships and endorsements of Derek's activities. His once prominent status as the cool kid began to erode, and I could practically feel the ground shifting beneath him. As Derek's connections started to dwindle, I turned my attention back to Ethan. I wanted to protect him from the fallout without him knowing the extent of my involvement. I casually brought up conversations about Derek, framing them as concerns for Ethan's well-being. "I just don't want you hanging out with someone who could lead you down a bad path," I said, trying to maintain a tone of concern rather than outright condemnation. Ethan's responses were mixed, sometimes defensive, sometimes contemplative. I could see the wheels turning in his mind, and it filled me with both hope and trepidation. Would he start to question his friendship with Derek, or would he dig his heels in further, choosing loyalty over reason? The tension began to build as I initiated the final phase of my trap. I reached out to the school administration, armed with the evidence I had compiled. I requested a meeting to discuss my findings, urging them to take Derek's behavior seriously. "It's not just about Ethan, it's about the safety of all the students," I insisted. "I've documented several instances of concerning behavior, and I believe it's time to take action before it escalates." As I waited for the meeting date to arrive, I felt a knot of anxiety in my stomach. Would the administration take my claims seriously? Would they recognize the danger Derek posed? Meanwhile, I continued to monitor Derek's online activities, watching as his social circle began to shrink. Friends who once rallied around him seemed to pull away, some even unfollowing him on social media. It was almost poetic, watching the walls close in on him as if he were the architect of his own demise. On the day of the meeting with the school administration, I dressed meticulously, wanting to convey professionalism and seriousness. I arrived early, pacing the hallway as I waited for my turn. My palms were clammy, but I reminded myself of the stakes. The safety of my son and the well-being of others depended on the success of my plan. When I was finally called in, I took a deep breath and laid out my evidence with precision. I presented the timeline of Derek's troubling behavior, the messages I had uncovered, and the patterns that illustrated his influence over Ethan and other students. I could see the expressions of concern on the faces of the administrators as I spoke, and it fueled my resolve. "This isn't just a case of typical teenage rebellion," I emphasized. "This is about protecting our children from a toxic influence. We need to take action before it spirals out of control." As I left the meeting, I felt a surge of hope. I had taken significant steps in my plan, and I could sense that the tide was turning. Derek's world was beginning to crumble, and the once powerful grip he had on Ethan was slipping away. But there was still much to do. I knew the final confrontation was approaching, and I had to prepare myself for whatever came next. The trap was set, and I was ready to see it through to the end. Stay tuned as the tension escalates and the true extent of Derek's influence is revealed. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment to share your thoughts. Your support is invaluable as we navigate this journey, especially as we prepare for the next chapter in Cairo. The air was thick with tension as I stood outside the cafe where I had arranged to meet Derek. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins, each heartbeat echoing my resolve. This was it, the moment I had orchestrated with painstaking detail. I was ready to confront the very embodiment of chaos that threatened my family. I glanced at my watch. He was late, but I knew he would come. He always did. When Derek finally arrived, he strode in with the same swagger that had always characterized him, oblivious to the storm brewing around him. He was dressed in a black hoodie, the fabric taut against his lean frame, and a hint of arrogance painted across his face. "Hey man," he said, his tone casual as he slid into the booth across from me. "What's up?" I leaned forward, my eyes locking onto his. "We need to talk, Derek, it's serious." He chuckled, dismissing my tone with a wave of his hand. "Come on, don't tell me you're still worried about that stuff. We're just having fun, right?" "Fun?" I echoed, my voice low but firm. "Is that what you call it? Fun? Leading kids into dangerous situations, putting their lives at risk? Because that's not how I see it." Derek's smile faltered for just a moment, but he quickly regained his composure. "You're overreacting. Kids need to live a little. You can't keep them in a bubble forever." "Live a little?" I leaned back, crossing my arms to maintain an air of control. "Let's talk about what living really means, shall we? How about the late-night parties where you encourage underage drinking and drug use? How about the messages I've seen where you brag about your connections in the drug scene?" His expression shifted, the bravado fading as the reality of my words settled in. "You don't know what you're talking about. Those are just jokes, man. You're taking it too seriously." "Jokes?" I pressed, feeling my anger simmer just beneath the surface. "I have screenshots, Derek. I have everything. You think this is a game? I know you've been influencing Ethan, and I'm not going to let you destroy his life." Derek leaned back in his seat, the confidence in his posture wavering. "You think you can just come in here and threaten me? I have friends, people who will back me up." "Friends, is that what you call them?" I shot back, my voice sharp. "Those are just enablers, Derek. You're nothing but a puppet master pulling strings while everyone else dances to your tune. But the music is about to stop." He frowned, shifting uncomfortably in his seat. "You're being dramatic. I'm just trying to help kids break free from their boring lives." "By putting them in danger," I countered. "You're not helping anyone, you're exploiting them for your own gain. You're a parasite feeding off their vulnerabilities." For a moment, Derek was silent, his bravado crumbling under the weight of my accusations. I could see the panic flickering in his eyes, the realization that his carefully constructed facade was beginning to unravel. "You can't prove anything," he finally spat, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. "Oh, I can prove plenty," I said, pulling out my phone and scrolling through the messages I had meticulously collected. "Let's start with this one." I read aloud a message where he'd flaunted his influence over Ethan and other kids, boasting about how easily he could manipulate them. "You're proud of this, aren't you?" He opened his mouth to retort, but the words caught in his throat. I pressed on, fueled by the knowledge that I was finally holding him accountable. "And how about your friends, the ones you've been hanging out with? I've spoken to their parents. Do you know what they think of you? They're terrified of your influence." "Parents don't understand," he shot back, but the bravado was fading. He looked around as if seeking an escape route, but there was none. "They're just overprotective." "Overprotective?" I scoffed. "No, they're vigilant, and I have evidence that you're not just a bad influence, you're a criminal. I've been to the school, Derek. I've presented everything I found to the administration. They're taking this seriously." His face paled, a flicker of panic transforming his earlier arrogance into desperation. "You can't do this. You don't know what you're getting into. You're just a parent." "A parent who cares," I shot back. "A parent who will not sit idly by while you ruin lives. You've underestimated me, Derek, and I won't let you take my son or anyone else's future away." The atmosphere in the cafe shifted. The noise around us faded into a dull hum as I continued to lay out my case. "You think you're untouchable, but you're not. I've documented everything, and I'm prepared to take this as far as it needs to go. I'll make sure you're exposed for who you really are. I'll ensure your actions have consequences." "Just stop," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "You don't know what you're doing. I can make your life a nightmare." I leaned closer, my voice low and steady. "You already are living a nightmare, Derek. You're trapped in your own web of lies. And the moment you chose to bring my son into this chaos, you signed your own death warrant." For the first time, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. The cocky demeanor that had defined him for so long was stripped away, leaving behind a frightened boy who had lost control. "You're crazy. You think you can just ruin my life," he shouted, panic overtaking him. "I'm not ruining your life, you are," I replied, my voice calm but firm. "You've made choices that have consequences. You've chosen to prey on the vulnerable, and now you'll face the repercussions." Derek's bravado evaporated, replaced by a frantic energy. "You can't do this. You don't have to do this. I can change. I can be better." "Change is only possible when you acknowledge the harm you've caused," I said, my tone unyielding. "But you've built your identity on manipulation and deceit. You're not capable of genuine change, at least, not without facing the truth of your actions." As the weight of my words settled in the space between us, I could sense the cafe patrons starting to take notice. Whispers filled the air, eyes darting in our direction. I had the attention I needed, and I pressed on, ensuring that Derek understood the gravity of the situation. "You're cornered, Derek. Your influence is waning, and your friends are backing away. You're losing your grip on everything you thought made you powerful. You're nothing without the facade you've built, and it's crumbling right in front of you." Derek's face was a mask of desperation as he struggled to regain control. "You think you've won. You think you can take me down. I'll come back and I'll make you regret this." I stood up, the weight of my resolve firm beneath me. "You're not coming back from this, Derek. You've crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. It's time for you to face the consequences of your actions." With that, I turned and walked out of the cafe, feeling the eyes of the patrons on me as I stepped into the world outside. The adrenaline still coursed through my veins, but I felt lighter, liberated from the burden of secrecy and fear. I had confronted the darkness that had threatened my family, and I had emerged victorious. As I drove home, I reflected on the confrontation. I felt a bittersweet satisfaction. This was not just a victory for me, but for every child who had ever been led astray by someone like Derek. I had taken a stand, and I would continue to fight for Ethan's future, ensuring that he would never again be ensnared by such a toxic influence. Join me as we navigate the aftermath of this confrontation, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment to share your thoughts. Your support is crucial as we continue this journey together, especially as we prepare for the next chapter in Cairo. The days that followed the confrontation at the cafe felt both surreal and cathartic. The air in our home was charged with a sense of relief, but it was tinged with anxiety as well. I had confronted Derek, but the fallout was just beginning. Word of his manipulations spread quickly through our community. The evidence I had presented to the school administration catalyzed immediate action. Derek's behavior had not only put Ethan and his friends at risk, it had also raised alarms among parents and teachers alike. Within a week, the school expelled him, a decision that sent shockwaves through the social fabric of his peer group. I had anticipated some backlash, but what followed was a rapid unraveling of Derek's life as he knew it. The businesses that had once supported him withdrew their sponsorships and endorsements. His friends, once loyal followers, began to distance themselves, fearful of being associated with someone under scrutiny. I watched as his social media accounts, once filled with likes and comments, became a ghost town, the silence echoing his fall from grace. One afternoon, I received a call from my contact in law enforcement. "We've been able to gather enough evidence to warrant an investigation," he said, his voice steady but serious. "We're moving forward with charges related to drug distribution and underage drinking. We anticipate an arrest soon." The news hit me like a tidal wave. Derek's world, which had felt so impenetrable, was collapsing. I felt a mix of satisfaction and concern. While I was relieved that he would face consequences for his actions, I couldn't shake the lingering worry about the impact this would have on Ethan. As the days progressed, I focused on healing the rift in our family. Ethan had been quiet since our confrontation, and I sensed the weight of uncertainty hanging over him. One evening, I sat down with him at the kitchen table, the remnants of dinner still scattered around us. "Ethan," I began, my voice gentle but firm. "I know things have been tough. I want you to know that I'm here for you. You can talk to me about anything." As he looked up, his eyes reflecting a mixture of confusion and vulnerability. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen, Dad. I thought Derek was a friend." "I understand," I replied, leaning in closer. "Friendships can sometimes lead us into unexpected places, especially when we're young and impressionable. It's important to learn from this experience." He nodded, but the tension in his shoulders remained. "I just feel like I've lost everyone. I thought I was cool by hanging out with him." "You're not losing anyone who truly cares about you," I reassured him. "Real friends will support you and lift you up, not drag you down. I want you to find people who respect you for who you are, not who you can pretend to be." As I spoke, I could see the flicker of understanding in his eyes. "I guess I just wanted to fit in." "Fitting in is important, but not at the cost of your values or your safety," I emphasized. "You deserve friendships that inspire you to be better, not ones that lead you into trouble." With each word, I could feel the walls he had built around his emotions beginning to crack. He finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think I can still find those friends?" "Absolutely," I said, a smile breaking through the seriousness of the moment. "You're an amazing kid, and I have no doubt that the right people will see that. It may take time, but I'll be here for you every step of the way." Meanwhile, Derek's situation escalated rapidly. News of his arrest broke through local media, a stark reminder of the consequences of his actions. The reports painted a picture of a troubled youth whose reckless behavior had caught up with him. His parents, once oblivious to the extent of his actions, were now thrust into the public eye, facing scrutiny and shame. I couldn't help but feel a pang of empathy for them, even as I recognized the need for accountability. As Derek faced legal consequences, the community began to heal. Parents organized meetings to discuss how to better support their children, emphasizing open communication and vigilance. I participated in these discussions, sharing my experiences and encouraging others to stand up for their kids. It felt empowering to turn a painful experience into a lesson for others. Slowly but surely, Ethan began to reestablish his sense of self. He started to explore new interests, joining a local sports team and reconnecting with old friends who had drifted away during his time with Derek. I watched as he laughed and played, the shadows of doubt and insecurity lifting from his shoulders. One Saturday afternoon, I took him to a local park. The sun was bright and the laughter of children filled the air. Watching him run around, playing with new friends, I felt a profound sense of relief. I had fought hard for this moment, and it was worth every ounce of energy I had expended. As we walked home, Ethan turned to me, a genuine smile lighting up his face. "Thanks for believing in me, Dad. I really want to make better choices." "You're stronger than you realize," I replied, pride swelling within me. "And I'll always be here to support you." With each step we took, I felt the weight of the past begin to lift, replaced by the promise of a brighter future. The healing process was ongoing, but we were moving forward together, united in our resolve to embrace life without fear. Stay tuned as we continue to navigate this journey of healing and growth. Your support means everything. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts. Join us as we prepare for the next chapter, especially as we turn our focus toward Cairo. The sun streamed through the kitchen window, casting a warm glow across the table where I sat, sipping my morning coffee. It was a peaceful Saturday morning, and the familiar sounds of laughter and playful banter floated in from the living room. I couldn't help but smile as I listened to Ethan and Sarah discussing their plans for the day, the joy in their voices a soothing balm to my soul. Life had transformed dramatically in the past year. With Derek's arrest and subsequent legal troubles, the community had rallied together, fostering a new sense of vigilance and support among parents and children alike. Derek, once a figure of misplaced power and influence, now faced the consequences of his actions. His reputation lay in tatters, and he had been sentenced to community service and mandatory counseling. The last I heard, he was struggling to find his way, a cautionary tale for others who sought to exploit their peers. But the focus of my life had shifted. I had reclaimed my role as a father, and with each passing day I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Ethan had grown in ways I hadn't anticipated. He had joined a local soccer team, flourishing both on and off the field, and his friendships had deepened with genuine connections built on trust and support. As I watched him engage with his friends, I could see the confidence radiate from him, a stark contrast to the shadows that had once clouded his spirit. He was no longer the boy who felt the need to fit in at any cost. He had embraced his true self, and it was a beautiful thing to witness. "Dad, come watch us practice," Ethan called out, his face glowing with excitement. I set my coffee down and walked to the door, my heart swelling with pride as I joined the small group of parents gathered to cheer on their kids. The practice was lively, filled with shouts of encouragement and laughter. I spotted Ethan darting across the field, his determination evident as he maneuvered the ball with skill. It was a joy to witness him thrive, surrounded by friends who respected him for who he was rather than who he pretended to be. As the practice wrapped up, I felt a sense of gratitude wash over me. The past year had taught me invaluable lessons about resilience, love, and the importance of standing up for what is right. Sarah joined me at the sidelines, her eyes sparkling with pride as she watched our son. "He's really come into his own, hasn't he?" she said, leaning against me. "Absolutely," I replied, wrapping my arm around her shoulders. I couldn't be prouder. Our family had grown closer, bound by the trials we had faced together. We had learned to communicate openly, to support one another unconditionally. The experience with Derek, while painful, had ultimately strengthened our bond, teaching us the value of vigilance and the importance of protecting our loved ones. As we left the field that day, hand in hand, I felt a sense of peace enveloping me. The shadows of the past were fading, replaced by the light of hope and possibility. We had triumphed over adversity, and the journey toward healing had brought us closer than I ever thought possible. Driving home, I glanced at Ethan in the rearview mirror, his face lit up with laughter as he recounted a funny moment from practice. I couldn't help but smile. The future felt bright, and I was ready to embrace it. In the end, the battle against darkness had been won, but more importantly, we had reclaimed our lives and our family. We had emerged stronger, heartened by the knowledge that love and resilience could conquer even the deepest shadows. As we pulled into the driveway, I took a moment to savor the sight of our home, filled with warmth and laughter. In that moment, I knew that good had triumphed over evil, and I was grateful for every lesson learned along the way. Join us as we continue to embrace the journey ahead, cherishing each moment of love and family. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts. Your support has been invaluable on this journey, and I look forward to the next chapter together.